time for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and make it daylight. Ah, what the fuck happened? Anyway, it's time to talk about comic books. This is Web of McWhorter episode 8, and we're gonna call this one CH-CH-CH-CHIA. Yeah, that's what we'll call it. Anyway, we'll talk about Swamp Thing. I'm gonna review the first 10 issues. If I could just the first 5. I'm gonna review the first 5 issues of the new 52 version of the Swamp Thing. But to do that, because the new 52 is a frustrating retcon headache, I'm gonna have to tell you all about the first 4 volumes of this fucking comic book. God. In case you didn't know, Swamp Thing actually had 2 movies made. The first one was starring Adrienne Barbeau's tits, and the second one came out in the 80s, and I know nothing about it. There was also a TV show. I didn't watch it. Or maybe I did. I don't know. That was a long time ago. Maybe. Anyway. The series started in 1972, and the original Swamp Thing was Dr. Alec Holland, who was a botanist, and he was working on this bio-restorative formula, where basically he took plants' abilities to heal themselves and tried to make a chemical so that humans could do the same thing. And then somebody came in that fucked up his shit, and he died in the swamp, and he turned into a Swamp Thing. And then this guy named Anton Arcane, who's like this evil Frankenstein kind of guy, working with some nasty Frankenstein type shit. His brother dies from a mine explosion, and he sews him back together like a Frankenstein monster. And he has like this army of unmen. I don't know what that means. I guess they're like zombies or something. Yeah, Swamp Thing just kind of fights them all the time. And the first series was only 24 issues. It started out strong, and then it started really sucking towards the end, so they canceled it. And then the second series, Volume 2, there's a Swamp Thing called Albert Holler. I don't know, it sounds German. And that was the Volume 2 Swamp Thing. And the Volume 2 Swamp Thing, so they went ahead and retconned him since they were restarting the series. So that's the first retcon, and changed his entire backstory to just being some dude that turned into a monster as a result of like some kind of, I don't know, lab experiment, some kind of explosion bullshit. It's always like a chemical and some swamp stuff. It's the same thing 4 times, basically. He's trying to live out a peaceful life in the Louisiana swamps. And then this, like, what the fuck was her name? Karen Clancy. Supposedly was the Antichrist, and that's how that series started out, is he was just kind of following her around, and yeah. But in the middle of that series, the writer, who was Martin Pascoe at the time, he left. Then the editor, Len Wein, who actually originally created Swamp Thing, assigned the title to a British writer, Alan Moore, and you guys have heard me talk about Alan Moore before because I fucking love Alan Moore. And whenever editors changed from the creator Len Wein to some lady named Karen Berger, she gave him the ability to completely revamp Swamp Thing a second time. So that's retcon number 2 in the middle of volume number 2. And changed him back to Alec Holland, except this time the Swamp Thing was just a monster that was basically a plant that had been grown in Alec's lab. And through the experiments that he was doing on the plant life in that lab, his consciousness got implanted on the plants. That sounds really lame for Alan Moore, I'm just gonna say. Let me down a little bit. Anyhow. So he's not actually Alec Holland in that version. He's just the Swamp Thing, and he thinks he's Alec Holland, but eventually he finds out that he's not, and he goes fucking batshit crazy. And he's a mental breakdown. Then some other stuff happens, and they ended up canceling this one because the sales dropped off as well. And then Volume 3 had another retcon, because this time the Swamp Thing was it was a separate entity. It was the monster and not the man, like in the second half of Volume 2. But the human part was Tefe Holland, who's actually Alec Holland's daughter. This is like kind of a half-assed retcon because it still uses continuity that was established in the volume before it, but it's still different. And she has the ability not only to control plants, but to control flesh, because she's the daughter of Alec Holland and Abigail Arcane, who is the niece of that villain Anton Arcane from the first volume. And the way that he impregnated her is he possessed John Constantine, who had just been given a blood transfusion by a demon, and he didn't know that. So yeah, that's kind of a stretch, if you ask me. But she was kind of not a good guy, and she went off on a lot of misadventures instead of adventures, in search of the Tree of Knowledge in Africa. Don't know if she ever got there. They canceled that series too. Fourth series started more recently in 2004, and it had a very, very, very short run. It had 29 issues, a little bit more than the first series, but the first series was actually popular and sold comic books for a little bit. But in the last volume, they revert Swamp Thing. They retcon him again, and they revert him to his original appearance in House of Secrets, number 92, I believe. And he's just like a plant thing. There's no human side there. It's just a plant thing that it's like an urban legend. It turns out to be true. It was really boring, and it started with low sales numbers, and it had low sales numbers all through 29 issues, so they canceled the fuck out of it. Then Swamp Thing was brought back into DC through a partnership of DC and Vertigo. He was able to cross over into a lot of stuff before, like Batman and Constantine and stuff like that. But they brought him back for Brightest Day, which was pretty much the end of old DC as we know it, or knew it. And that the plant thing of Swamp Thing, I think this one kind of goes back to Alan Moore's version of Swamp Thing and attaches there. But oh man, I also should probably mention that Alan Moore created the idea of the green, the red, and the black. The green is the Parliament of Trees. The red is mankind, flesh, blood, all that. And then the black is the rot, which is death. Zombies and shit. The rot are the bad guys. And the green and the red are the good guys. So, yeah, Swamp Thing basically gets his powers from the Parliament of Trees. Before Brightest Day, there was like this thing. There was this short series. No, not short series. This was part of volume... maybe? Yeah, this was part of volume 3, back in the 90s. Nope, volume 2. Sorry, volume 2 is the longest running thing. So just know that. But, Volume 2, back in the 90s, towards the end there was this thing where Swamp Thing actually discovered that there were other parliaments other than the Parliament of Trees. There was also the Parliament of Wind and Fire and Water, Air, and Captain Planet and Heart. He basically kicked everybody's asses in all those other parliaments and absorbed their powers and became the strongest elemental with the ability to control the planet Earth itself. And that was where Volume 2 ended, which is why it was weird that they were all like, yeah, let's do Volume 3 and focus on the daughter, and the Swamp Thing is like, he's like this monster, but he's not like the god monster where he can control the planet. He's just lame. Volume 3 is weird, and Volume 4 sucks. Anyhow, back to Brightest Day. The monster version of Swamp Thing from Volume 2 believes himself to be Necron, which is a DC villain, and it's very similar to whenever he thought that he was Alec Holland. So Necron's personality was implanted onto Swamp Thing in the same way that Alec Holland's had been. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So he's like a bad guy. And the White Lantern Corps, who were the bringers of life, were like, nah, fuck this shit. And so they created another Swamp Thing from the actual remains of Alec Holland's body. So this is a new Swamp Thing. This is like another retcon outside of an actual Swamp Thing comic book. That's actually made from the remains of Alec Holland, but he's not a member of the Parliament of Trees. He's a member of the White Lantern Corps. And that's only one of several affiliations that Swamp Thing has. And really quickly, he's also, aside from Parliament of Trees and the White Lantern Corps, he's in Justice League Dark, that's with the New 52. And he's also had partnerships with John Constantine and Animal Man. Anyhow. So the Alec Holland made White Lantern Swamp Thing, because he's a White Lantern, he kills the fuck out of the original Swamp Thing, who believes himself to be an evil mastermind. He kills it and takes its place, and then the Green give him the power of the Green. The Parliament of Trees give him the power of the Green, and he becomes a protector of the Green. And he kills a bunch of businessmen and then goes into hiding. And then we have a three-issue miniseries called Search for the Swamp Thing. And it's immediately after the events of Brightest Day, and it's John Constantine as he's trying to figure out what the fuck happened and where Swamp Thing is, with the assistance of Zatanna, Batman, and Superman. Superman finally finds him, and that's where we come to New 52. Swamp Thing. Okay, so Volume 5, this is what I'm reviewing, the first 5 issues. This is also a retcon, but it's where they pick and choose pieces of different origins of Swamp Thing and put it together to make a new one, instead of actually, creating something that hasn't been done yet for Swamp Thing. But whatever. So, in the first issue, Alec Holland has been resurrected as a human being. So I guess after Brightest Day, when he left and went into hiding, maybe he converted back to human form. Maybe the Parliament of Trees gave him his body back, since he was actually made of the remains of Alec Holland, so he was Alec Holland. I don't know. They really don't explain it in the issues that I've read. So he's resurrected as a human being, but he has all his memories as a plant elemental, not just from Brightest Day, but also pieced together, like they selectively chose parts of Volume 1, and those are his other memories of being a plant elemental called the Swamp Thing. So this also this heavily ties into Volume 1, but it also it's also reminiscent of Volume 2 because the other Swamp Thing was killed by the Swamp Thing that Dr. Alec Holland was. Whatever, it's fucking confusing. Anyway, so he's got this formula, and Superman finds him because he wants him to continue his work on the formula, because there's like birds and fish that there's life everywhere all over the earth that is just dying. And they show, like, in the bat cave, like a bunch of bats just kind of fall from the ceiling. It's kind of funny, but also weird, creepy. And then, like, Aquaman's in the ocean and all these fish die, and he's like, what the fuck? And then, like, Superman's flying around and all these birds die. He's like, what the fuck? So he finds Alec Holland, and he's like, you have to finish your work on the formula. And he's like, fuck the formula. And then he gives Superman the finger, which is awesome because I want to do that. But he goes to the swamp to try and throw away his formula, but he's stopped by a Swamp Thing, not the Swamp Thing, but a Swamp Thing. This goes back to Volume 2. In Volume 2, they created this the idea that there have been several Swamp Things throughout history, and that Alec Holland was not the first. So they really expand on that in the new one, and just throw it right into the opening origin, establishment of continuity, whatever. So, this is like a guy that's been Swamp Thing for a little bit, and it's his time has come. He's done being Swamp Thing. He's gonna just kind of wither into nothingness and become part of the earth, or a tree if he can take root. But he has to join the Parliament of Trees to do that, and he's running out of time while he's trying to convince Alec Holland to take his place and become Swamp Thing again. And Alec is he's not hearing any of that. He doesn't want to be Swamp Thing. And he starts asking about this woman that he has random memories of, and he's like, I feel like I'm in love with this bitch, but I've never met her. And so the dude's like, you gotta stay away from her. Her name is Abigail Arcane. She's bad news. And he's like, okay, well, you're just a weirdo. And eventually he meets Abigail Arcane. And after we meet Abigail Arcane, very, like, immediately, like the next issue, they introduce her younger brother, who is a new addition, a new supporting character. He's not in any of the other previous works of Swamp Thing. And he is, we're led to believe right off the bat that he is supposed to be the, I guess, the defender of the black. He's like the representative of the rot, whereas Swamp Thing would be the representative of the green. And so what Abigail is doing, because she actually seeks out Dr. Alec Holland, and she tells him to come with her or die, because the rot itself has started sending its unmen. They go back to the unmen from Volume 1, but instead of these being a creation by Anton Arcane, it's actually unmen. It's the same unmen, and they do mention Anton Arcane, but in this he is dead. So, again, it ties heavily to Volume 1, but it's still, I don't know. So these are unmen that are created by the rot. It basically, like these little flies that go into like your ear or your nose or your mouth or whatever, and once they're inside, they break your neck and twist your head around, and then your head's backwards, and you're an unman, and you just want to fucking kill everything. And it's weird. And it's creepy. It's really creepy. I don't ever want to see a person with their head backwards. Shit my pants. But so they're going to the hospital where this kid's at because Abigail's younger brother, because he's got this thing where he has to stay in a bubble all the time. He can't have human contact. And his whole life, the Red has been talking to him, much like the Green attempts to talk to Alec Holland, except he ignores it all the time because he doesn't want to be Swamp Thing. And he starts listening to it, and it tells him, because these kids at the hospital, they're kind of dicks. They all have terminal diseases, but they pick on the kid that's in a bubble. So I guess even kids with terminal diseases can be dicks. Yeah! So the Red tells him to kill them, and it gives him special abilities, and he kind of has control over flesh. Oh wait, no. It's not flesh. Dead skin. Anything that's dead. Dead skin, dead stuff, dead wood, dead plants, anything that's dead. Anything. You can control it. Dead cells inside your body. So, and like if you have a dead tooth in your mouth, you can send that sucker right straight through your brain. Yeah, crazy. Anyways, but he kills everybody in the hospital and goes out of the bubble with a little oxygen tank and goes on a little killing spree. And eventually, he catches up with Alec Holland and Abigail Arcane, who try to attempt to hide whenever they get to the hospital and discover that everyone's dead. Abigail says, "Well, looks like fucking Red found this kid, so who is also my little brother, and yeah, we're gonna have to go now because you don't have your powers and you're fucking lame." And she's saying that to Dr. Holland, by the way. So he's going on this killing spree looking for them. The Red's telling him where to find them, and or not the Red, the Rot, the Black. My bad. But he catches up with them, and a little bitty, tiny, itty bitty battle ensues. Not really anything to get excited about, but it is like the climax. So it's still pretty exciting. You got like all these fucking zombies coming into this tiny town. A gigantic, like, at one point he turns a herd of cattle into like zombie cattle, like uncattle, I guess, I don't know, and like puts a baby's head on one of them, and it's really disturbing looking. And he catches Abigail after what's his face, Alec. Oh yes, Alec tries to communicate with the Green a little bit because he gets scared. Because whenever he's with Abigail Arcane, she actually has a psychic connection to the Rot, and he has a psychic connection to the Green. They both ignore both of their connections because she doesn't want to be a bad guy and he doesn't want to be Swamp Thing. But when they're together, it's their powers kind of flare up and they have no control over it. So he can kind of communicate with plant life. So he takes down the little brother with some clever little tree magic, whatever. And then the kid just kind of climbs out of the tree and he's like, "Oh man, that hurt. You're a dick." But here's the part where the plot twist comes in. And everybody's like, "Whoa!" So it turns out that the Rot was actually looking for Abigail Arcane the whole time, not her little brother. So she gets put into this little cocoon thing, and all the little unmen and zombie cows with baby heads carry her off to where the Rot is, when scary and zombie-like. And so they're going to turn her into the champion of the Rot and have her kill Alec Holland, the Red, and the Green. And basically kill everything on Earth so the Rot can reign supreme. Woo! And at that point, Holland starts running because he's a little scared. Probably would be too. And the unmen chase after him, and he trips on something. Classic horror faux pas. he trips on something, he falls, they get a hold of him, and as they're about to start ripping him apart, the Parliament of Trees encloses him in this little, like, cocoon of really hard leaves, I don't know. And so they're like trying to break in, and they can, because it's plant life, you know, and they're people with chainsaws and guns and shit. They're zombies, but they're smart zombies. And they're like trying to rip in there, and the Parliament of Trees is basically guilt tripping Alec Holland and being like, well, we got you in this thing, but we're not gonna do anything about it because you're a dick. Because we wanted you to be Swamp Thing, and you said no. So fuck you. I mean, we're gonna prolong your death by putting you in this thing, but we just wanted to tell you that we're also, like, at this moment, we are being set on fire, and it's your fault. So we brought you in here to guilt trip your ass. And the reason they're being set on fire is because there's this whole other storyline going on towards the last 2 to 3 issues. That's kind of like a side thought. But the rot finds its way to this expedition in the jungle. And you're kind of like thinking, why the fuck are these explorers being converted into unmen by the rot in some random ass jungle? And all of a sudden they come upon the Parliament of Trees and they set those bitches on fire. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Carry on. So they're guilt tripping his ass, and then he's all like, but I want to be Swamp Thing now so I can save that girl over there. And like, we told you not to get in fucking shit with that chick. And he's like, yeah, but I think I like her, and she's hot, and I like that white streak in her hair. And they're not buying it. So he offers them the last batch of his biorestorative formula. There's no more left, and the way to make it is only inside of his brain, his noggin. And so he's like, I'll give this to you guys to save your asses from the fucking fire. And because weird time portal control plant magic bullshit that they don't explain, he's in one swamp, they're in a jungle, separate places of the earth, they get it somehow. And it saves them. And then they turn him into Swamp Thing. But he takes control of the transformation halfway through, and instead of giving in to the green, he imposes his will upon the green. So he's partially human inside. And instead of being a defender of the green when he's done transforming, that was a weird way to pronounce that word, when he's done transforming, he looks very different, and there's more solid bits instead of it being all just like moss and vegetation. And he's actually, they classify him as a soldier of the green, and he's actually, his purpose is to kill and make war with anything that threatens the green. Not the red. He doesn't fight for the red anymore now, but just the green. So I think that makes him a pretty fucking cool anti-hero. He's like, fuck humans, but also fuck bad guys. Green. Go green. 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 Ooh, green. Anyway. So yeah, that's at the end of it, he sprouts little tree wings and flies off to start fucking beating the shit out of some bad guys. I didn't get to see him beat the shit out of one single bad guy in the issues that I read. That was very disappointing. But I'm like really pumped to continue reading this. The writer for this one is where's the writer? Scott Snyder. I don't know a whole lot about Scott Snyder, admittedly. So let's click on his name and see what the fuck this thing says. Work in comic books, including American Vampire, Detective Comics, Batman, Gates of Gotham, and Swamp Thing. So he's a horror writer. No wonder that's why they brought him in to write Swamp Thing, because Swamp Thing has an origin in horror. And the artist is this dude Yannick Paquette, who I actually had a chance to talk to at Dallas Comic Con. Oh no. I should have taken this shit with me so that he could fucking sign it, but I didn't think about that. So this guy Yannick Paquette, he's the artist, and I really dig the way that he draws the new Swamp Thing, the new versions of Swamp Thing. Like I said, it's not just like this big muscular thing of vegetation and leaves and goop. He has like what kind of looks like tree bark armor, which is fucking the shit. And he's huge, and he has tree wings. I mean, like branches that grow really thick ass leaves, and then he can fly away on that. He can fly. So his powers, aside from what he already had, being able to control plant life, unfortunately he doesn't get to keep any of his godlike abilities from the end of Volume 2, but being able to control all plant life through like a psychic connection or whatever, being made of plant life himself, he can also shapeshift and grow. He can't shrink because plants don't ungrow. Duh. But he can stretch and all that kind of cool shit. He has super strength, and he's incredibly tough, but he can be hurt. He's not invulnerable like Superman, but it's really hard to actually hurt him. Incredibly hard. You have to be someone like Superman to harm him, which is cool for something made out of plants. And he can also, if his body gets damaged to a point where he can't heal himself rapidly enough, he can turn any plant into a new body for him to inhabit. Fucking cool. And now he can fly. So, fuck yeah. Everything that comes before this is really hit or miss. Even the Alan Moore bits, which, and like I said, I fucking love Alan Moore, but even his bits are really hit or miss. But a lot of it is really cool. And unfortunately, it seems like the consistency for Swamp Thing is to start out cool and then suck and then get canceled. So hopefully this series does not follow along that. We've had, aside from, what's it, I can't remember the name of the story arc, but the introductory story arc, and then Trinity War and Forever Evil, and now he's in Justice League Dark as a pretty regular member for now. Hopefully he will stick around, because this version of Swamp Thing is awesome and badass, and they do something that I like, even though it's not creative and new. They go back to the original Swamp Thing, the Dr. Alec Holland shindig, and they use a lot of the history to make their own story, which, even though it's completely unoriginal, it's also very cool, and I appreciate that. And I recommend watching the first movie, because the costume is so shit-tacular, but it's awesome. And check out the show and tell me what it's like, because I didn't. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Yeah. Did you hear that? Did you hear that tapping? Is that loud? Is that loud? Does that bother you? Do you want to turn down the volume right now? Yeah, it's like a 4 out of 5. It's really good. I like it. It's got good writing, good storytelling techniques, really, really nice, nicely tied together, revamp, retcon origin of a classic horror DC hero. So check it out. Go buy some, please, because this series deserves to keep going. Yeah, go read Swamp Thing, and Excelsior?